They both occupy the same time and space. But here's what's interesting. Not one comet, not two comets. There's three comets on their way. Hey YouTubers, Michael here from the YouTube channel Lamb and the Dragon. Just want to share some thoughts with you. A couple years ago, I kind of was looking at the American flag and did a little bit of math. Kind of, what is this flag revealing to us underneath the surface? And I played with it a little bit. And if you look at the flag, of course, there's 13 stripes, 50 stars, with 5 points each on the stars. Now, 50 times 5 points is 250. Now let's say that represents 250 years. Minus 13 stripes, or what I like to call beatings from God. Those whom I love, I rebuke and chasten. If you take 250 minus 13, that gives you 237 years. 1776 plus 237 years brings us to the year 2013. Now, I did this a couple years ago. Why? Who knows? Just curiosity, looking for signs in pretty much anything, I guess. But here's what's interesting about this. The year 2013 is going to show not one comet, not two comets. There's three comets on their way that we will be able to see. And the one in November, which is Comet I-Sun, they're saying could possibly be 15 times brighter than a full moon. If you can imagine that. I mean, we all know how bright a full moon is. 15 times brighter. That's interesting. Now, I don't know if anybody's seen the Mark Blitz videos about the blood moons and solar eclipses that are on their way. But Mark Blitz did these videos well before they knew these comets were coming, about how in 2014 and 2015 we have lunar and solar eclipses that begin landing on Hebrew holy days. I find that interesting that those events are preceded by comets, an unusual number of comets, and an unusual appearing. In other words, they're saying these could be the comet of the century type comets. Now, one more interesting thing to add to these blood moons or lunar and solar eclipses that begin to land on Hebrew holy days in 2014 and 2015 is the following year, 2016, is the Hebrew year 5776. Okay, what's the significance of that? Well, our Gregorian year, 5776, is 1776, or 5776 from Adam. We all know what 1776 represents. And the Hebrew year is some sort of, or the Gregorian year, one or the other, some sort of shadow, exactly 240-year shadow, which is 10 times the hours in a day, or some sort of symbolic 24 hours. Shadow and object. Now here's my thoughts on what possibly the Egyptians are trying to tell us with the pyramids. In the right location, at the perfect time, something happens. A pyramid or an obelisk or any object casts a shadow when the sun hits it. But when the place and the time are perfect, both shadow and object meet. They both occupy the same time and space. Okay, now we know that Paul said, the Apostle Paul said that the things that happened to Israel were a shadow of good things to come. I find it interesting that we have an exact 240-year difference between the Hebrew and the Gregorian calendar. No question, interesting times ahead. I'm going to be doing more videos face-to-face like this. I got a lot of things to talk about. Nuclear bomb scripture that I found that I recently did a video about. We'll talk about that a little bit. What the number 144,000 is symbolizing, proving that we are in the time that the prophets spoke of. And I'm going to leave you with this quote from the introduction to Isaiah. It's definitely food for thought. When I seen it, I was kind of stunned on how easily we can be fooled by what we read on a page. This is from the introduction to Isaiah 1560 Geneva Bible. That's 50 years before the King James. It says this: in the reading of the prophets, this one thing is to be observed. They spoke of things to come as if they were now past. Put simply, the characters in the Bible that we read about were purposely written in the past tense to fool us into thinking we were reading about historical figures when those figures were yet future. Think about that. Think of all the biblical characters that you know about, and keep that quote in mind. I'll put a link at the bottom of the video to the Geneva Bible where you can read the introduction to Isaiah and see it yourself. Now there's a scripture in Isaiah 46:10 that says this, in part, telling the end from the beginning. Now right there's a clue that things are flipped in our mind. We were given the lessons before the people that were spoke about even existed. That's mind-boggling to me. Until next time, you guys have a good one.